Hi, my name is Tim. I'm one of the veterinarians working out of Franklin Vets Taupiri, and welcome to another one of our Facebook presentations. This one is part of the mating series. Today I've been given the lucky chance to talk to you all about the bull breeding soundness exam. Now, this is going to be a pretty crucial part of ensuring that your bull team is going to be working effectively and that your farm's going to be ready for the natural mating period. First off, what is a breeding soundness exam? So this is going to be a thorough look at your bull's general health, his reproductive health, and his semen quality. It's going to be a warrant of reproductive fitness for your bull. It kind of tells us that at the time of examination that this animal is going to be fit for breeding, it's in good health, and that his semen is going to be of good enough quality to get cows in calf. Why do we perform breeding soundness exams? Now, these exams are done to identify any possible subfertile bulls in your bull mob. Fully infertile bulls are rare, but subfertility is relatively common, as we'll see in a moment from the studies. Now, these animals will be able to get some cows pregnant, but it's going to take longer. Cows may be missed, and this could result in lower pregnancy rates and extended calving intervals. Subfertility can be caused by low libido, low sperm quantity or quality, as well as physical factors affecting bull mobility, so like lameness and stuff. Scrotal size can also have an impact on it. Now, there is a wealth of information out there indicating how common these issues are. So looking at the beef and lamb study, they found 18% of 2-year-old bulls and 25% of mixed age bulls were assessed as being unsound for breeding. Other studies done overseas kind of found that 17% were designated as unsatisfactory, and another study indicated 23%. So yeah, usually kind of sitting around that region, kind of 1 in 5 is usually the number that we quote to people. Now, these breeding soundness exams are done on farms when they have had issues with higher empty rates, or when they're kind of going situations where they're moving to single sire mating, or they're going to be running low bull to cow ratios. So how does this subfertility actually affect our mating? So here's 2 studies. I mean, we've known about this for a long time. One of them was done in 1965, the other in 1986. So the first study showed that bulls classified as satisfactory, questionable, and unsatisfactory based on the results of a breeding soundness exam resulted in pregnancy rates from a natural mating of 75, 52, and 12% respectively. And then the other study in 1986 showed that there was a 5% improvement in pregnancy rate when bulls were selected based on favourable results from a breeding soundness exam. So here's a more recent example, looking at this farm's pregnancy rate graph from their fertility focus report. Now, this farm did 5 weeks of AI mating and then went to bulls after that. So I've marked with a red straight line on the graph when the AI period ended. So usually when the bulls go on, we do like to see either a continued increase in pregnancy rate at that point, or even a bit of a jump as they come in fresh and ready to go. As you can see from this graph, there was definitely an issue as our graph kind of just leveled off and only very slowly increased in pregnancy rate there. So this farm did have an issue with subfertility in its bull mob. So what are the limitations of a breeding soundness exam? So these are just not the be all and end all. There are going to be some limitations. So basically it is just a prediction of future fertility for this animal. We can only certify them as being sound for mating on the day we see them. Things can change with time as we get closer to mating. So things can happen like infections. These animals can come down with BVD or IBR. Any other sort of infection can have an effect on sperm quality, as well as issues like lameness or traumatic injuries can have effect on this bull's ability to get cows and calf. Another thing that these things don't test for is the bull's libido or its serving ability, and this is usually done with a separate test if it's deemed necessary. So how do we implement them? So these are usually performed 30 to 60 days prior to the animal's intended use. This will give us time to either revisit animals with questionable results, or in cases of obvious failure, look into purchasing or leasing replacement bulls. So suitable facilities will also be required. Safety is going to be top priority for, well, the veterinarian performing the exam as well as the bull. We like to have a metal bar behind the animal and have the ability to put the animal on a head bale if required. We also need to have access to the side of the animal without the animal being able to turn around. Also quite important is it's a lot better to have reasonable weather at the time. No one can really get in the mood when you're standing out in the rain, so it also will have an effect on our sample quality. So yeah, reasonable weather is very much recommended. So there are three major components to a breeding soundness exam. Now we're going to briefly talk about these in the following slide, but it does include a physical exam, a sperm motility exam, and then a sperm morphology exam. Now that part is usually performed back at the clinic. Cool, so the first part is the physical exam. Now I'll usually start this off by doing a body condition score on the animal, making sure we're at a reasonable condition to go to the cows. Then I'll run my eye over the animal's general physical health, have a look in its eyes, make sure there's no lesions there, look over its body for any signs of traumatic injury or any other signs of illness that may have an impact on this animal's ability to make cows. Then we'll move down and have a little bit of a look at its locomotion score, make sure there's no evidence of any lameness, as well as having a good look at its hooves and making sure there's no issues there. Then we kind of move to our more kind of delicate stuff. So we'll do a reproductive organ exam, including an internal exam, pretty much making sure that all the bits are there where they're meant to be, and there's no signs of any kind of enlargement or any issues there. Then we'll do a scrotal circumference reading, and it's been shown before that there's quite a high correlation between your scrotal circumference and an animal's sperm output. 2-year-old bulls should really have a scrotal circumference of about 34 centimeters. Moving on, now we go to one of the more tricky parts of the whole process, and that's trying to obtain a semen sample from the animal. And there are a few ways to go about this. One of them is to use an artificial vagina, attempt a prostatic massage, or we could use a process called electroejaculation. This is usually the method we rely on. It's a reliable and efficient method for obtaining a pretty reasonable sample. So what it is it does involve using the probe as shown in the photo. And what this is designed to do is to deliver a low voltage stimulation of the nerves of the sacral plexus. So there are strict policies in place for the use of this technology, and that's primarily targeted at ensuring that the animal's welfare isn't compromised during its use. And so these policies focus on things like the voltage output of the device, the positioning of the electrodes, and the technique and training of its operators. The New Zealand Veterinary Association does oppose its use unless a trained veterinarian is present to make sure that those animal welfare requirements are met. So once we have got a reasonable sample, we can move to the next part, which we usually do on farm, and that's looking at sperm motility. This is a rough kind of indicator of the percentage of live sperm in the sample, and it basically looks to make sure that they're swimming and that they're swimming in the right direction. Results on this test can be influenced by technique during sampling, temperature at the time of sampling, or any sort of dilution on the sample. Okay, moving on, the next part is sperm morphology. This is usually done back in the clinic. Slides are taken and prepared on farm, and then we look at them a little bit later. So what this is a more thorough, close-up examination of the individual sperm cells for the presence of any abnormalities. Usually we kind of count out about 100 sperm cells, and the requirement is that 70% of them have to be morphologically normal to pass this animal on this test. And finally, we want to make sure that we're not going to be spreading any sort of disease around our herd by bringing these bulls onto the property. So making sure that they're TB tested, they're BVD tested and vaccinated, and they're lepto vaccinated before they get to your farm. Okay, so what should I do if my bull fails its breeding soundness exam? This isn't the end of the world. It depends, obviously it's a case-by-case basis, but if we do detect a subfertility issue, Oftentimes it can be a bit of a self-resolving problem and it can improve with a bit of time. If you are close to mating, ideally you would be replacing the bull if possible. If that isn't a possibility, then we need to account for the fact that this bull is potentially going to be subfertile, so running higher numbers of bulls in your mob, as well as rotating your bull mobs regularly. We do recommend always retesting animals that do fail outright, and we can't really certify an animal as being, fully infertile without having multiple failed tests. Cool, that's all I had to talk about. Thank you very much for your time. If you want to discuss bull testing for your property, just contact your veterinarians. Leave any questions in the comment box below and we'll try answer them. And good luck for the mating period.